MSI got in touch with us recently at KitGuru and wanted us to check out one of their powered by MSI desktops, in this instance put together by Stormforce here in the UK. This is the system that was sent out to us. Take a closer look. Can you spot any problems? Hi guys, I'm Matt and welcome to KitGuru. So I'll start off by saying that this video was originally supposed to be a review of this powered by MSI Prebuilt, which comes put together and shipped by Stormforce here in the UK. Things changed though when I realised that there were a few pretty major issues with the build while I was going through my testing. Before we take a look at those issues and how we've managed to fix them though, here's a little bit about the spec and the system as a whole, as well as the price. As I mentioned, this is a powered by MSI system, meaning it goes heavy on the MSI components, namely the GPU, the motherboard, the power supply and the cooler. It's got an Intel Core Ultra 9 285K CPU paired with an MSI RTX 5080 Shadow Edition graphics card. For memory, there's 64GB of Corsair Vengeance RGB CL40 running at 6000 megatransfers. Those three components are sitting in an MSI Z890S Pro Wi-Fi motherboard. Powering everything is an MSI MAG A850 GL power supply. Then for storage, the system contains a 4TB Kingston NV3 M.2 SSD. Then for the CPU cooling, we have an MSI D360 all-in-one liquid cooler. And finally, housing everything, as you can see, is a Vortex King 95 Pro case, a rebranded Montech King 95 Pro case. And the price, you might want to sit down for this bit, it's £3,199.99. So this isn't a cheap computer by any stretch of the imagination. Pricing up a similar system to build yourself on PC Part Picker, minus the graphics card as they're just not in stock anywhere, but including a genuine copy or genuine Windows license, comes in at £1,826.70 at the time of me recording this video. So Stormforce / MSI are charging just shy of £1,400 for the 5080, as well as putting it together, delivering it, and for Stormforce covering it with their warranty, which is 3 years of collect, repair and return, which is likely going to come in very handy, especially if you had this exact system delivered to you. There's no getting away from the fact that this is an expensive system. If I'd personally spent this much money on a computer, then I'd expect everything to be set up well and the system to be faultless. As I alluded to earlier though, that wasn't the case. Let's start with problem number one then, and likely the cause of problem number two, which I'll move on to in a moment. The graphics card had been installed in the wrong PCIe slot, a PCIe Gen 3x1 slot to be precise, which obviously absolutely destroyed the gaming performance. And what's more, whereas the PCIe Gen 5 slot on this motherboard in this computer is reinforced, as they are on most motherboards, to help it support the massive size and weight of the latest generation graphics cards, the others aren't. They're flimsy plastic and they're not designed to house GPUs like the 5080 we find in this computer. With the card installed in that wrong slot, gaming performance was absolutely dreadful. Hogwarts Legacy was a stuttery mess at 4K. And F124, a game which usually runs at high frame rates on every PC that I've reviewed pretty much, ran at just 70-ish FPS at 1440p. Moving on to issue number two then, the front USB-C port on the case wasn't working when I unboxed the machine, which any of you very eagle-eyed viewers may have spotted the reason as to why that is at the start of the video. Due to the GPU being installed in that wrong slot, it had likely moved around during delivery, causing damage not only to the PCIe slot itself, but also bending the USB cable which connects to that front USB-C port that wasn't working. That's another issue which will be immediately noticed by anyone who brought this system, and it will no doubt make that 3.2k price tag even harder to swallow. Issue number three then, this was a more minor one, but it was still an issue nonetheless, and it was that XMP was not enabled in the BIOS by Stormforce, causing the memory to run out of the box at 4,800 megatransfers and not the 6,000 megatransfers that it should be running at. So all in all, I think it's fair to say that this machine was a mess when it arrived with me for the video. XMP not being enabled is a basic error that should have been picked up when configuring the system, and the graphics card being installed in the wrong slot is a pretty big oopsie, which not only caused physical damage to two different parts of the system, but also massively hampered performance on a massively expensive computer. As I mentioned at the start of the video, this was originally meant to be a review of this desktop, but with the issues, we didn't feel it was needed, as they needed highlighting, as that's a big part of buying and picking up a pre-built computer. Obviously, if I'd brought this system myself, it'd be going straight back to have the physical damage repaired, but for the sake of the video, I've resolved everything that I can to show the difference in performance if things are set up properly. First of all, I moved the GPU to the correct PCIe slot and got it running at the correct speed, which highlighted the fact that the PCIe slot, the incorrect PCIe slot that it had been installed in the first place, was damaged due to the weight of the card. Then I reattached and kind of bent back into place that broken USB-C cable for the front port, which I was surprised, in all honesty, that that still worked, as it did get pretty bent up when it lost its fight with the graphics card. Then I enabled XMP in the BIOS to get the memory running at 6000 megatransfers as it should be. That's as simple as just ticking a box in BIOS. And then finally, just as some general checks and updates, I updated the BIOS, which in Stormforce's defense, or maybe MSI's defense, it was only a month out of date. So one or the other of those have updated it. It was either shipped like that or Stormforce have updated it. And then finally, I checked every driver was up to date. The NVIDIA app wasn't installed, so it was a case of heading to the internet and grabbing the driver, not something I usually have to do on pre-builts that I looked at. After filling in my kind of temporary role as a Stormforce quality control member, the PC was in a much better state and it showed in the performance. The same section of Hogwarts Legacy at 4K saw the GPU utilization increase, FPS almost doubled, and the stutter was completely gone. That was much more like what I'd expect to see from a computer like this. F124 also felt much more like it usually does. The FPS jumped to north of 300. As a reminder, it was around 70 before these fixes, and the visuals were smooth throughout the game's built-in benchmark. It felt much more like you would expect it to feel on a $3,000 computer with that game running at 1440p. There are other arguments and comparisons we could make with the performance, which I would be talking about if we were pitting this system against others in my usual review style, but I've intentionally not delved too much into the technical troubleshooting that I went through fixing the issues, as I think that's a large part of the appeal of a pre-built for a lot of people. They may not have the technical knowledge and they just want to plug it in and just want it to work. Which leads me nicely into the end of the video and my conclusions. This system raises a very good point in the pre-built versus build your own argument. A large part of the reason that someone might choose to go down the pre-built route is that they do not know, or they do not want to know, how to build a gaming computer. Maybe you don't have time, or maybe you just want to buy a top-end computer, plug it in and then game, which a lot of people will do that. My point is, not everyone will know how to fix the stuff that I've fixed with this computer to get it performing as it should. Pre-built systems can be great, but this system in particular just adds fuel to the build your own side of the argument, which I felt like in recent times, it was kind of getting to more level ground. Pre-builts were starting to sometimes show value and show kind of convenience of not having to put the system together yourself if you didn't want to. The errors in the build and the lack of attention to detail on a £3,200 computer just cannot be ignored. Simple stuff like enabling XMP should be expected on a pre-built machine from any retailer at any price point. Then the GPU being installed wrong is just inexcusable. There's nothing else I can say about it. It caused damage to the motherboard, damage to a cable, and massive drops in performance. I obviously cannot recommend this system in any way, and if I brought it myself, I'd be fuming. Stormforce need to take a look at their quality control department and make sure that no one ever receives a system in this state again. Don't forget to subscribe to Kit Guru to keep up with the latest PC gaming news and reviews. And if you go down below the video, you'll find links to our merch store, where you can pick yourself up a hoodie or a t-shirt or stuff like that. And then if you go down into the video's description, you'll find links to our Discord server, our Patreon page, and our website. Anyway, guys, I've been Matt. This has been a bit of a disaster with this powered by MSI Stormforce pre-built desktop. I'll speak to you in the next one. Look after yourselves. See you later.